It's basically do or die for the Carolina Panthers on Sunday as they host the Bucs. I'll tell you how they can take back control of the NFC South right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Carolina Panthers host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday for what is the biggest home game in some time here in Uptown Charlotte. And I understand that last Thursday night, you were exuberant watching Tampa lose to the Atlanta Falcons, thinking that the Panthers were just 2 wins away from being division champs for the first time in a decade. Then on Sunday, we all know what happened down in New Orleans. And of course, it was all so very predictable that the Panthers, who have shown time and time again this season that they cannot handle success, that they would lose to the lowly Saints for the second time this year. But let's all put that aside and recognize just the significance of the moment that's in front of Carolina on this Sunday. I want everybody that has the means to be loud and proud and in that stadium early on Sunday afternoon. Truly, do it. I've heard a lot of y'all bitch and moan constantly. For the last 5 years of me doing this, there's been a bunch of just miserable people who watched and listened to this show. And I love each and every one of you, but I've had a lot of complaining over the years. And honestly, I don't want to hear any more complaining moving forward. If you can't show your ass up for a game like this on Sunday, seriously, if you're a fan of this team and you have the money, you have the time, go to the game and be loud and cheer your team on. If you can't do that, then I don't want to hear from you the next time they blow an opportunity. I want to hear from you the next time they start off 0-5. I don't want to hear any of your complaints if when at least times are good, considering around here since David Tepper has been here, this is the good times. Being 7-7 in week 16, this is the good, y'all, especially when it's been so bad recently. So I implore you to get your ass to that stadium on Sunday. And excuse me for the language. I'm sorry. It's just something I got to get off my chest because I've watched it this week. I've seen it. And look, yeah, I have my opinions as being someone who has to cover the team and be objective here when talking about them and not be emotional about whether they win or lost. That doesn't really impact. Obviously it has an impact my mood because when they lose on Sunday, I know just how a lot of y'all are. You're going to tune out. And I'm going to have to try to talk people off the ledge and bring you back onto the show. So here we are. Enjoy the moment. Hopefully they get it done on Sunday. Here, how can they do that? Well, I'll tell you right now. With the 3 keys victory after that mini rant here on Locked On Panthers. So key number 1, talked about this yesterday with James Yarko of Locked On Bucs, who felt like for the Bucs to win on Sunday, they need to stop Rico Dowdle and stop Chuba Hubbard. Really, Rico, and he's saying how Rico has been a stud this season. And I push back because if you watch the last 5 games, that really hasn't been the case. Go back to week 5 through 9. When Rico stepped in as a starter while Chuba Hubbard was out, then there was a rotation, but then he took over the starting role after that against the Packers. Those 5 games, he rushed for 652 yards and averaged 6.3 yards per carry. That was the best in the NFL. He was also 4th in EPA per rush and had a 50.5 rushing success rate. The Panthers were 4-1 during that time. Since then, looking at weeks 10 through 15, there was a bye week in between there. He has rushed for 243 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. That ranks 29th and 83rd, respectively, among running backs during that 6-week period. He has a negative 0.14 EPA per rush, which is tied for 36 out of 48 running backs during that time. He has a 26% rushing success rate, and the Panthers are 2-3. There is a good argument to be made that Rico Dowdle saved the Panthers season. They were sitting there at 1-3, having just been shellacked by the Patriots on the road. They got down 17-0, and Bryce Young made some important plays in that game to keep the game alive. But Rico ran determined, ran hard, and he ran Carolina across the finish line that Sunday afternoon against Miami. And then he told the Cowboys to buckle up and did it the next week when Dallas came to town. And then even with the rotation, was solid against the Jets. Bills game is what it is. And then he was excellent in that win against Green Bay. Without Rico Dowdle, this Panthers team's not in this position. So they're going to need Rico to help them get across the finish line here in the final 3 weeks, starting on Sunday against Tampa, then next week against Seattle, and then one more time on the road against the same Buccaneers team. So they got to get Rico's groove back on Sunday if they want to win this game. Number 2, they got to win in the red zone. Saw this from Jenna Lane, the Bucs reporter for ESPN.com. Tampa has a brutal red zone defense this season. They are 30th in red zone defensive percentage at 72.2. 72.2% of the time, they're allowing touchdowns on the red zone drives. And look at the goal-to-go defense as well. 90% of the time, when Bucs opponents are in a goal-to-go situation, they are scoring a touchdown. And you're probably thinking, well, yeah, isn't that mainly going to be the case for a lot of teams? Well, yeah, New England, the number 2 seed right now in the AFC, every single time a team has had a goal-to-go situation against them this year, they have scored a touchdown 90% of the time for Tampa. So that's 4th worst in the NFL. There are teams like Denver where they've only allowed 61% of the time a team to score a touchdown in a goal-to-go situation, which is just ridiculously good, and why they are the number 1 overall seed right now in the AFC. So you look at Carolina, though, they have not been the best offensively in the red zone. They're 26th in red zone touchdown percentage at 51.3%. But when they do get into goal-to-go situations, they more often than not, which is most teams, find a way to punch it in, having an 80% conversion rate on goal-to-go situations, turn those into touchdowns. That ranks 12th in the NFL. So finishing off drives has been a talking point we've had all season long, but especially on Sunday against a terrible red zone defense. And that has not been the case in Tampa throughout the Todd Bowles era. This is when it's really completely cratered this season with the injuries that they've had, some of the miscommunication they've had defensively. The Panthers have to win in the red zone if they want to win this game. And then number 3, we bring it up basically every week. They got to limit turnovers. You look at Tampa Bay this season, they have 11 turnovers this year. Tampa has turned the ball over 6 times. In their losses, they have 7 losses, and 6 of their 7 losses, they have a turnover. New England's the only time that they have lost a game without turning the ball over, and the Patriots are a much better team than Tampa Bay this season. And you look at Baker Mayfield in particular, he has not really taken care of the ball. He has the 2nd most turnover-worthy plays among quarterbacks in the NFL this season with 23, and those aren't all just because he's been under pressure. When he's been under pressure, he's had 11. When he's been kept clean, he's had 12 turnover-worthy plays. So under pressure, kept clean, doesn't really matter. Baker has put the ball in harm's way this season. When you look at Carolina, if you take out that fumble in the final play last week against New Orleans, which it counts as a turnover, but that's not really a turnover. The game was over. They weren't going to do the pitchy woo-woo and actually score a touchdown. There was not going to be any Bourbon Street miracle. That wasn't going to happen. The game was over. They blew it. But that was a fumble, so technically it counts as a turnover. We're not going to count that. So 3 of the last 4 games Carolina's played, they have not turned the ball over. So that's the Saints game. That's the Rams game. They turn it over against San Francisco, and they did not turn over against Atlanta. 3 of the last 4 games, they've taken care of the football. The defense also, you look at the 5 weeks heading into New Orleans, had 10 takeaways in those previous 5 games and 0 on Sunday against the Saints. And Nick's got to bring this up on Wednesday when we spoke to him, saying that they've got to find a way to get back to taking the ball away. And they had a lot of success in those games when they had done that defensively. The Panthers are 4-1 this season when they have 2+ takeaways. The only time that they've lost is, of course, that Niners game where they had 3 straight interceptions of Brock Purdy and turned that into 1, 2, 3 points, which is not enough, obviously, as they lost that game on Monday night. So if they limit turnovers and then get the takeaways, that should obviously tilt things in their favor on Sunday. But the important thing is when they get those takeaways, you got to win and finish in the red zone. And a way to do that is by getting Rico Dowdle's groove back to what he was doing back in weeks 5 through 9 for Carolina. Those are my 3 keys victory for the Panthers against Tampa on Sunday. But will they have Ickey Ekwonu? He's listed as questionable. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch. Finally, giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track prices as it drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last-second surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. And every match, concert, or event with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Let's take a look at the Week 16 injury report for your Carolina Panthers heading into this monumental matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both teams sitting at 7-7 atop the NFC South. The win for Carolina would position them to take their first division title in a decade, while a loss would be crippling and devastating to their playoff hopes here in 2025. Talk more about the scenarios, the 4 paths for Carolina to make the playoffs here a little bit later on here on the show. But looking at the injury report, Ickey Ekwonu popped up there on Wednesday as a DNP, did not participate because in knee injury that he had to fight through in that loss against New Orleans on Sunday. He was not able to practice on Wednesday or on Thursday, which typically means they're not going to play, but he was limited on Friday and officially listed as questionable. Dave Canales, when asked if it would be a game time decision, he said probably that would be the case. If he is unable to go, that would mean that Josh Nijman would get his second start of the season at left tackle. He filled in for Ickey back in week 1 down in Jacksonville. It would be Nijman, Lewis, Mays, Corbett, and Moten. Moten and Lewis are both on the injury report this week. Both are good to go. No injury designation. That would be the 11th different starting combination for Carolina in 15 games if Ickey's not able to go and Josh Nijman has to start. And you look at PFF, this offensive line unit with potentially 11 different starting combinations in 15 games, they rank 17th in PFF's pass blocking stat and 6th in their run blocking stat. And it's incredible considering all that they've had to deal with the injuries on the offensive line, season-ending injuries to guys like Brady Christensen, I guess. Chandler Zavala is probably not coming back anytime soon. Robert Hunt being out since week 2, and they're still here in this position. And also, in the NFL, we don't need 18 regular season games. Maybe you want those, but you look at the attrition that we've seen late into the season, the fact that the Panthers have had this many different guys at the starting offensive line, this many combinations, probably 17 is good. 16 was fine too. Just that's one thing I think about when we get late in the year. It's like, do you really want guys like Ickey Ekwonu not able to play in a massive game like this in week 16 because, we played a lot of games already? I don't know, but that's the situation on the offensive line. Looking at the wide receivers, Tedero McMillan, who popped up in the injury report with a foot/ankle injury, he was full. He has no injury designation. We talked to him on Wednesday, and he didn't seem to be all that concerned about whether he'd be available or not. But in his words to a reporter after he was done with his availability, I don't be saying bleep anyway. So if he was injured and he wasn't going to play, He's not going to tell us. Nothing we really gained from ever talking to T-Mac, if I'm being honest. But yeah, he's good to go. David Moore at elbow. He's been out since week 4 when he was injured on that first offensive play of the game on a Jets sweep against New England, which is actually a positive play, but he had to be carted off. And I said back then, I've never in my life seen anyone carted off due to an elbow injury. Maybe if it was like Pop Warner football, that would make a lot of sense. But for him to have that, clearly that was significant. He was in a lot of pain to be carted off in that situation. So he's now back, and that shows you just how significant it was. The fact that he was carted off with elbow and that it certainly was that severe, considering he's not even coming back until potentially this Sunday to play. So he's full. He's questionable, though, for the game. Now, Carolina is going to have to make a decision as far as what they want to do. They have 53 men right now on the active roster. So in order to activate David Moore, who's in his 21-day return to play window, they would have to waive somebody from the active roster. And once they do that, they have another decision to make. That would be made there on Saturday where they're going to do that. But then they have another decision to make as far as who's going to be active at wide receiver on Sunday. Every game this season, they've had 5 wide receivers be active on game day. The top 3 has continuously been, when healthy, Jalen Coker, T-Mac, and Xavier Legette. After that, it's been Bryson Tremaine, and then it's been Jimmy Horn Jr. over the last month and a half of the season. Looking at it, who does David Moore replace if he indeed is active on Sunday? It's not going to be XL. It's not going to be T-Mac. It's not going to be Jalen Coker. So it's either Bryson Tremaine or Jimmy Horn Jr. Now, looking at it, Bryson Tremaine so far this season has played 241 offensive snaps. Jimmy Horn has played 106. Looking at special teams, Bryson Tremaine has played 185 snaps, while Jimmy Horn Jr. has played 4. So based off of that, who do you think the coaching staff values more heading into this game against against Tampa? Probably Bryson Tremaine. Obviously, I could be wrong about this, but I'm just looking at that. And my guess is that if David Moore is active, that it will be Bryson Tremaine who will also be active with him as the final 2 receivers active on game day against Tampa Bay. And that Jimmy Horn Jr. would be a healthy scratch. That's just my guess from what's played out this season and the fact that it took until David went down, along with having traded away Adam Thielen, having Jalen Coker on IR, for Jimmy Horn to finally get an opportunity to play there in week 5 against Miami, where he made obviously a huge catch on that final drive. So I'm guessing if David Moore is good to go, it will be him and Bryson Tremaine as the final 2 receivers behind Coker, McMillan, and Legette. And you can certainly ask, why is XL in there, considering all that he's not done this season? But they trust him. They invested in him. He's going to be up there on Sunday. Trevin Wallace, shoulder injury, still bothering him. He was limited on Friday, and they have ruled him out for Sunday, meaning Clyde Sherlis will start in his place. I'd imagine this also means that Isaiah Simmons, who they signed to their practice squad a couple weeks ago, he's been active the last 2 games. I would guess that this would mean that he will be elevated again, and that would then mean if they want to elevate him one more time, or they would have to sign him to the active roster for him to play again. So I'm guessing Isaiah Simmons will be up again for them. Chris Barnes, who was in the same position as Simmons, had been elevated 3 times from the practice squad, eventually was signed to the active roster. He would be the 3rd linebacker behind Clodden, behind Roseboom, who I'm guessing would wear the green dot. And then you would have Isaiah Simmons behind him. And then there was, of course, Bam Martin Scott as well. So we'll see how it all plays out on Sunday. But Clyde Sherlis will start in place of Trevin Wallace, who's injured with that shoulder. And that's just going to be a problem the rest of the year. It felt like a pain tolerance thing, and getting that bye week certainly helped him out. But yeah, we're not going to see Trevin healthy until next year when it comes to the shoulder. Turk Wharton, hamstring, did not participate throughout the week. He's out again on Sunday. This will be the 6th game that he's missed this year, 4th due to a hamstring injury. This one really no fault of his own, tripped over a teammate. I feel for him. Huge game last week, couldn't play in it. Huge game this week, can't play in it, and we'll see how the next 2 weeks play out for him. But the trip over a teammate, like that just sucks, man. So Bobby Brown III will once again start in place of Turk on Sunday. That's where things stand injury-wise for the Panthers heading into this NFC South potential title bout against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. There's 4 paths for Carolina to make the playoffs. We'll go over all 4 of those here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. One final word before heading into this game on Sunday. As I said at the top of the show, get there if you can. If you have the time, you have the money, get your tail in that stadium and root these guys on, y'all. There's just been so much that you've been through since David Tepper bought this team, and especially over the last couple of seasons. There's not been very many times to be excited about a game. And I understand that what happened against New Orleans certainly dampened the excitement, and had the Panthers won that game, this would have been for the division. This would have been to go to the playoffs. But it's still very much that way for me, because I look at it, Sunday feels like it's do or die. The Panthers obviously do not want to go from 7-6, having a half-game lead in the NFC South, to lay an egg against New Orleans, to then losing this game and being 7-8 and having their backs against the wall, and basically, in my opinion, the season being over, because they would need Tampa then to lose to the Dolphins, who would be quarterbacked by Quinn Ewers or, God forbid, Zach Wilson. They need to win on Sunday. Now, ESPN is giving Carolina a 22% chance to make the playoffs, and that's 22% chance to win the division and make the playoffs. There's no path to the wild card, which we talked about after the game on Sunday. The Athletic gives the Panthers a 45% chance of a win on Sunday to go to the playoffs. It goes down to 5% if they lose. Now, those numbers were before Seattle took down the Rams in overtime last night on Thursday Night Football to claim the #1 seed. Of course, Seahawks come to town next week. There are 4 games, y'all, that will decide whether Carolina goes to the playoffs this season. This Sunday against Tampa, next Sunday against Seattle, and, of course, Week 18 at Tampa, and then Tampa's game next Sunday against Miami Dolphins. There are 4 paths for Carolina to make the playoffs. Path number 1, the Panthers just simply win out. They win this weekend, they win next week, and then they win the week after that. They sit there at 10-7. I wouldn't say scalding hot, but pretty damn hot when you look at the fact that they would have beaten the Rams, the Seahawks, Tampa twice, and for their last 5 games of the season that they had already beaten, of course, Green Bay. Carolina would be in a good spot. They are heading into likely hosting that Monday night game, either against Seattle or LA as their 5 seed. And there would be a possible chance that at 10-7, they could be the 3 seed. The Athletic gives them a 28% chance of having that happen. And if it does, that would mean them hosting San Francisco as things sit right now. And then if Chicago holds on to the 2 seed, that would be the road game. And I mean, San Francisco obviously would be a tough matchup, but you already picked out Brock Purdy 3 times. It'd be at home. Chicago, if you're going to have to play a game in a divisional round on the road, like, I think the Bears are a team that you'd love to play against, as opportunistic as they have been. In fact, that, yeah, just like Bryce, but Caleb Williams never been in that situation. So it would be kind of it would not be an easy path, but it would be a path that you look at. It's like, oh, hey, maybe they can make a run there. But you got to win on Sunday first for that to really be realistic, because path 2, the most realistic path, in my opinion, is beating the Bucs on Sunday, losing to Seattle most likely next week, and then winning on the road at Tampa. Like, these are the 2 games against Tampa that really matter the most, just getting into the dance. Now, if you win against Seattle and you win against Tampa, both those games, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of momentum, and there's possibility, as I mentioned, to get the 3 seed. But just being in it, just take care of your division rival. You beat them both times, you win the head-to-head, and you're in, and then you're most likely going to get LA as your 5 seed at home. And you've already demonstrated that you can beat them. But you probably don't want that to be the case. But either way, you want to be in the playoffs no matter what. So that's the second path. Path number 3 is if they win on Sunday and they beat Seattle next week, which would be huge, and the Bucs lose to the Dolphins on the road, there you go. It's over. You're in because Tampa, best amount of wins they could have is 8. Well, Carolina already be at 9 wins. So, yeah, there we go. That would be it. So, win on Sunday, beat Seattle, and then have Tampa lose to the Dolphins. Now, that is not a scenario that I've really bought into, that being Tampa losing to the Miami Dolphins. Now, James Yarko of Locked On Bucks believes that the Bucks can lose to the Dolphins. I don't see it. I don't see it with Quinn Ewers. I don't see it with Zach Wilson, if that's what it comes down to. I understand they have Devon Achane and some other players, but guys, come on. Maybe it happens. I didn't necessarily think that Atlanta was going to beat Tampa or that New Orleans was going to beat Tampa. I've been wrong plenty of times. It's hard to project with how these teams are playing right now in the NFC South, but damn, like that, if you lose that game, Todd Bowles probably gets left down there in South Beach. He's not going to be coming back to Tampa with the job if that happens, just based off of what James had to say to us yesterday on the crossover. So that's path number 3. Win on Sunday, beat Seattle, have Tampa then lose down there in Miami. Path number 4, and this is the one that I find to be the least realistic, is they lose on Sunday, they beat Seattle, the Bucks lose to the Dolphins, and then they beat the Bucks. And look, ESPN's FPI that's Football Power Index, gives Carolina an 18.5% chance of making the playoffs if they get the head-to-head split against Tampa Bay. Why would that be 18.5%? Because they would need to then beat the Seahawks, who are right now sitting and will be the number 1 overall seed in the NFC next week. And then Tampa would then have to lay an egg down in Miami against Quinn Ewers and the Dolphins. But if that does happen, that Carolina loses this Sunday, rises up to beat Seattle, Tampa then loses to Miami, then they beat Tampa in week 18, they would have the head-to-head be tied because, of course, they both split. The division record, which would be the next tiebreaker, also tied, as they would both be 3-3 in the NFC South. And then it comes down to common opponent, which we've gone over many times. Now, when we've looked at it, it's been really based off of both of these teams being 10-7, not sitting here at 9-8. But at 9-8, with Tampa having lost to Miami, then things do get interesting. Because, of course, they're both tied for the division record at 3-3. The Panthers beat the Jets. Tampa beat the Jets. The Panthers lost to the Niners. Tampa beat the Niners. The Panthers lost to the Patriots. Tampa also lost. They both lost to the Bills. Carolina lost to the Cardinals. Tampa beat the Cardinals. Carolina beat the Rams. Tampa lost to the Rams. Carolina beat the Seahawks. So did Tampa. Carolina beat Miami. And in this scenario, Tampa would have lost to Miami, meaning that when looking at it, common opponents, both of them have a 7-7 record. So after that, the next tiebreaker would be conference record. Carolina would be a 7-5, while Tampa would be 6-6. And that would get the Panthers in the playoffs if they have a head-to-head split here over the next couple of weeks, with in particular them losing this upcoming Sunday against Tampa Bay. So if they lose on Sunday, you're rooting hard for Miami. And of course, you're going to have to go out there and support this team on next Sunday against Seattle to get it done, to then be in position where it is winner take all on Sunday night, possibly between Carolina and Tampa in week 18. Any other combination results of the next 4 games in question that I mentioned? This Sunday between Carolina and Tampa, next Sunday between Carolina and Seattle, and Tampa, Miami, and in week 18 between Carolina and Tampa. Any other combination results, the Panthers will not make the playoffs. So that's the path, y'all. Either win out, just win these 2 games against Tampa, win the next 2 weeks, have Tampa lose to Miami, or you battle back from the grave, lose this Sunday, beat Seattle, Tampa blows it in Miami, and then you beat Tampa Bay likely on Sunday Night Football in what would just be a hilarious matchup of 8-8 teams, and the whole country being like, why did you give us the NFC South to watch on this final weekend, this final game of the regular season? Why? Because we're all having fun, right? We're all having fun. We're having a blast. And I'm excited to be there on Sunday to see y'all in that stadium early, loud and proud, cheering on your team and hoping to be just one more step closer to the playoffs. And if they drop it, There's still a path. But buddy, that is a tough road to hoe if it does come to that. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and over on Blue Sky at Julian Council, because I'll be back with you all on Wednesday answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is at me or DM me over on Twitter or on Blue Sky to get those questions into me immediately following the game on Sunday. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Sunday afternoon, live inside Bank of America Stadium, where we'll either be talking about the Panthers being potentially one win away from the playoffs or having to find a way to bounce back after a crushing loss at home. All that coming up here on Sunday/Monday on Locked On Panthers.